Tell me after.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Prescott Police Services Board meeting of February 1st, 2023. I will now call the meeting to order. It is 8:59 a.m. The first item up on the agenda is the election of the chair. And I have a suggested motion here that reads that Jeffrey Lashway be appointed as the chair of the Prescott Police Services Board for a term expiring on November 14th, 2026. Could I have a mover, please? And a seconder? All in favor? Motion carried.
Okay. There we go, we're all set. So for introductions, do you want me to go around the table or should everybody just go introduce themselves? Which do you guys prefer? Okay. Whatever the board, I'll go this way then. I welcome Mary Campbell to the board.
Yes, thank you.
Rob Samoya. I always.
It's Samoilo.
Samoyo. I know I get that wrong. I'm sorry, Rob.
Pretty close.
I try hard. Our mayor, Rory Shankar, and I'm sorry.
Julianne Fathy.
Julianne Fathy and Joshua Kingsley.
Yeah.
I guess we get to business then. Let me see here. The first order of business will proceed with item number 2, the approval of the agenda that you have. That the agenda of the Police Services Board meeting of February the 1st, 2023 be accepted as presented. Do I have a mover? Corey? And a seconder? Mary. All in favor? Motion's carried. The next order of business is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? None? Any presentations? None. There are no delegations. The next is item number 7. Is a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting held on October 20th, 2022. The recommendation reads that the Police Services Board minutes October 2022 be accepted as presented. Do I have a mover? Corey, a seconder? Bob? All in favor? Okay, that's carried. Communications persistence under item 8.1, there are no action items. Under 8.2 is the 2022 statement. Is there any discussion on the billing statement? None. We have a recommendation under 8.2 that the information items be received, noted, and filed. Do I have a mover? Rob? A seconder, Gory? All in favor? Carried. And reports. This report under 9.1 is the police services report for the month of October to December 22, provided by Inspector Josh Kingsley.
Thank you, Chair. First off, congratulations to the mayor and members of council for this year's election. Looking forward to working with the new board and the new council. So I will get right into the October to December Police Services Board. So when we look at, I'm going to start with our violent crime reporting. In that reporting period, there was one sex assault, which I'm happy to report is a 75% decrease from the same time period last year. And overall, when we look at our year-to-date numbers, sex assaults in Prescott have trended downwards. So in 2021, within the city, there was 16 sex assaults, but in 2022, there was 11. So we saw a 31% decrease, which is encouraging. Of note, resources for victims of violent crimes and sex assaults have increased. So a lot of other areas have seen increases in reported sex assaults. So it's encouraging to see that there are less of these violent crimes. Our assaults for the October to December period did increase. They went up from 9 to 13. So I did look into that to see if there was any kind of trends. Out of those, there were some minor altercations between youth and then some domestic violence incidences. So 10 of those occurrences were cleared by charges and 3 were deemed what we'd call consensual fights that the victims or the accused persons did not want to proceed. So all of those occurrences are cleared in what we'd call a positive state. But there has been an increase of 27% year to date. So last year, I refer to last year, like 2021, we had 29 occurrences, and in the 2022 calendar year, we had 37 occurrences. So we did see a slight increase. However, overall, violent crimes within Prescott did decrease. So in the 2021 calendar year, we had 78 violent crimes, whereas in 2022, we reduced that by 6% down to 73. So we did see an overall reduction. The reduction itself was in sexual assaults and our other crimes against persons, which tend to be like threatening type crimes where people are threatening death or bodily harm or those kinds of circumstances. So we did see a reduction in those kinds of crimes. When we look at our property crimes for this year, we had quite a few break and enters. So we went up from 1 to 5 in the October to December period. Overall year to date, we've got a very similar trend. So we had 9 reported in 2021 and we're down to 8 in 2022. So a small reduction. Our theft overs went up, and that we've seen that increase across the province with high-end vehicle thefts and vehicle thefts. So we had 6 theft overs, which is trending on par with 2021. So 2021, we had 8 and we're trending at 8 as well. Our theft unders, which tend to be the minor thefts, are trending downwards 26%. So we went down from 53 crimes last year to 39 this year, or 2022. And then where I did see an increase this reporting period was our mischiefs. So we had 3 mischiefs from October to December last year, but they did increase this year to 7. So I looked into that a little bit and I noticed there was 2 of those were domestic related mischiefs where arguments amongst intimate partners resulted in property damage of the other person. One of them was the tree at the golf course, which created some media attention. And there was a few vehicles that were rummaged through, but there was no property loss. So it was they were classified as mischiefs. When we look at our trafficking and our drug crimes, we had 1 drug trafficker arrested in the October to December period. Overall, the drug crimes have come down in the 2022 calendar year. So in 2021, we saw 10 drug crimes. In 2022, we saw a 20% reduction down to 8. So when we go to the next page and we look at our clearance rates, for the October to December time period, we're sitting at 70% clearance rates for our violent crimes, which is a 20% decrease from the 2021 calendar year. However, I do preface this a little bit in each board meeting. The way clearance rates work is they're very fluid. So what happens is if an investigation starts, say in December, but it doesn't get solved till January, then that would show as an unsolved occurrence because it's still ongoing. It's still a continuing investigation. So you would see that clearance rate would increase at the next reporting period. So when we see lower clearance rates, it's not a real big concern because we look at it as a totality and they're very fluid. So if we would look at the meeting minutes, for example, from this same time period last year, if you look at 2021, you'll see we're at a 91% clearance rate. But at this same time period last year, it was likely in the 70s, because as our detectives and our investigators start to continue to positively solve crimes, they go back and update the clearance status of those crimes that occurred at that time period. And then it reflects the stats of that time, not the current reporting period. So those will fluctuate. When we look at our October to December property crime clearance, we're sitting at 27% clearance, which is a slight increase. And overall, year to date, we've seen about a 5% increase in those clearance rates. And our October to December drug trafficking is currently sitting at 0 because that trafficking investigation is still ongoing. It hasn't been what we call solved yet. That's why you've seen 100% reduction, even though there was one trafficking investigation that was open during that time period. It hasn't been solved. So that brought our year-to-date clearance rates down to 50%. So when we go to the next page, in terms of our public complaints, we have no ongoing or current complaints of any of our officers in our office. So that's positive to report. When we go down to our patrol hours, so patrol hours here, just to clarify for the board, is when an officer is not engaged in any other call for service. So they're not engaged in a traffic stop in the town. They're not engaged in attending a domestic or any other call for service that would be occupying their time. This is strictly a cruiser or a person in the town engaging in proactive patrol. So it's basically flying the flag, if that's what you want to say. So during this reporting period, we had 237 and a half proactive patrol hours, and we had 20 and a half foot patrol hours. So that's just officers not engaged in any other duty other than driving the streets and, proactively looking for crime or anything. But as soon as they engage in a traffic stop, that reports the time differently. When we look at our detachment initiatives, we are very proactive in terms of releasing information to the media. So I'm hoping you're following our Twitter and our Facebook feeds. However, Grenville County itself is probably one of the leaders in the East Region in terms of keeping the public aware of what we're doing. So we did have several releases during this time period in relation to stunt drivers, impaired drivers, and who can forget the December weather events that we had, which shut down the 401 from basically the entirety of the East Region. So that really diverted a lot of traffic onto the secondary roads for those that still chose to travel. Luckily, we had no fatals during that time and in the region, which is a blessing. During this time period, we also had our festive ride event. So officers were engaged in reducing impaired driving activities. So that's where officers are going to be staged doing impaired driving and other offenses. And we were using, as part of that, we capitalized on some of the ride grants that the town was successful in getting. So that was above and beyond the ride events that the officers did on their proactive time. So when I go to the actual call for service billing summary, unless there's any questions, I don't generally go line for line in there. What I tend to do is look at where your call for service billing summary was compared to the previous calendar year. So in 2021, your billing summary would have been at 7,148 hours, whereas in the 2022 calendar cycle, you were down about 450 hours. So you went down to 6,705.4 hours. And that's as a result of some of the reductions you saw in the calls for service that we were responding to. Subject to any questions, that's the report for October to December.
Okay. Are there any discussion items on this?
So it is the fifth straight year in which we have reduced our calls for service. So when you take a look back to 2018, we were at 1583, and then this year we're at 1346. So that is good news that we're progressing in that. And also, as Inspector Kinsley just mentioned, our 4-year average was about 7,450 weighted hours. And in this particular year, it's 6,700. So it does have an effect on our overall billing. So when we were taking a look at the billing statement a little bit earlier, there's two components to billing. One is kind of a fixed fee per property. The other part is part of a weighted average. And so they take our total calls for service as well as our total weighted average and the hours. And then they compare us to the overall province and say, what share of the pie does the town of Prescott need to share in terms of the costs? So the fact that we're continuing to go down is a positive move, so that our share of the pie kind of decreases a little bit more each year. And as for the billing statement, it was a decrease of approximately 45,000 between 2022 and 2023. So positive news, and really that goes to a lot of the messaging and the work that our OPP detachment and the officers do in the town of Prescott, because really that's our goal, is to drive down calls for service, be able to address the higher priority ones, and then be able to move on. So thank you very much for that. And also, I think we've created a really great relationship between bylaw and the police department. And we're starting to be able to intervene a little bit earlier in property disputes and neighbor disputes, in people that tend to be high flyers or chronic users of the police service. And so all of those initiatives together have really come together, and we're very pleased with how that's progressing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have a very strong working relationship with the town and bylaw, and one of those initiatives is the mobile crisis response team. So, and just because it is a new board, could I maybe explain the mobile?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. So our mobile crisis response team is a partnership with Brockville General Hospital, where we have a full-time nurse and a full-time social worker working out of our office in partnership with officers that we dedicate to this. So they respond to persons in crisis. So historically, the police have always been the de facto agency to deal with anybody who's going through mental health crisis, substance abuse, or anything like that. And then we've responded, and they've become, a lot of those people have unfortunately become prolific callers, just because we're able to connect them with social services or get them into the right stream. But a lot of those people unfortunately ended up getting into the criminal judicial system because of behavior issues or substance abuse issues. So recognizing that, and recognizing how mental health is a contributing factor to a lot of things that the police deal with, we were successful in applying for a grant. This will be the second year of the grant. Prior to the grant, we were piloting this initiative, but now we've got a lot of grant funding that we're partnered up with Brockville General Hospital. So our officers respond with the nurse or the social worker. They respond to live calls for service, but they also do proactive reach outs. So anybody that might be what we'd call a prolific person, or if the town reports someone like, we're having this issue with these two neighbors and there could be underlying mental health issues or anything like that, we'll proactively deploy that team to engage with those individuals, to try to make sure they're engaged with any kind of social services to assist them prior to them having to engage with the judicial system. And that's been extremely successful. As a matter of fact, within Grenville County, I have the stats here for January, which I didn't get a chance to provide to the board because I literally just got them. But out of all the municipalities within Grenville County, Prescott has the largest referral so we've got 21% referrals out of Prescott or engagement within the town of Prescott for this team. So it's been very, very good. We've got a lot of people connected. The town also has a grant, which is contributing to this on top of the grant that we got from the province. So right now we've been running this program for about 5 years. At first it started off part-time, but it's since expanded to, we've got 2 full-time officers. One's just coming back from parental leave, but we've got 2 full-time officers, and now we've expanded to 2 full-time BGH workers. And we could use more even. There's that much need for this kind of program. But anything from, persons struggling with mental health issues, struggling with addictions issues, pardon me. We also do a lot of caregiver support because there's oftentimes a lot of family members of people who are struggling or in crisis don't know how to help that person. So we're often engaging with family members and other support services to really have a wraparound service for these individuals to try to make sure that they're one, safe in their own homes or in their own communities, that they're, not causing these issues with their neighbors or with, town employees or municipalities and those kinds of things. So it's been extremely successful. I think you're going to see, we are seeing this platform expand across the province to our municipal services as well as all other police agencies in Canada, as a matter of fact. So mental health is not going away. And I think this is a good way to divert people into the proper streams. So just a good little news story on that. And if there's any questions on the mobile crisis response team, I'm happy to answer that.
That team was involved this summer a lot down on King Street.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
How many hours would they have? Is it listed there? Like how many hours they put in?
With that individual?
Well, with
Well, they work 40 hours a week each. Yeah. So, I mean, if we look at like just in January itself, so they would have done, 160 hours, right, in a month. And 21% of their time was in town at Prescott on different calls for service. That's just in January.
Right.
So that's right. In January, we would have had the 2 BGH workers and 1 full-time staff member, just while our other full-time members on parental leave. So that just goes to show the amount of time dedicated to persons in crisis.
Do you think that is contributing to the lower overall numbers?
100%. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. What we're seeing is people who would have been prolific callers or where we would have had several repeat calls for service. We may only be getting 1 call for service now. And then this team is engaging and getting them connected. So instead of that person calling again because they're in crisis again and again and again, they're now engaged with the proper services to prevent them from having to defer to the police as their de facto response.
Right.
So
good. Thank you.
yeah.
So in a sense, they're developing a relationship.
Very strong relationships. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Any other questions or discussion?
Just, I get up super early and walk around and I've met 2 different individuals who clearly are in distress. But that's not a call to you guys. You must know of them and you just walk by and.
I don't know. I don't walk around too early. So, I mean, it depends because there are a lot of individuals so a person suffering mental health illness is not necessarily a person in crisis. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're engaged. So just because someone's walking around, maybe talking to themselves or those kinds of things, that doesn't necessarily engage the police or engage other services. You can always contact our office if you've got concerns and we can engage with that person to make sure that they are connected. But when it comes to mental health, it is very much a consent-based program. Like the person has to consent to treatment unless they meet the definition of apprehension. So they're a danger to themselves or others. They're not caring for themselves. They're like under the Mental Health Act, there's certain criteria that have to be met for us to force treatment onto someone or to be able to what's called apprehend. So AKA arrest them and bring them to the hospital and basically force them into an assessment. Whereas someone struggling with maybe, addictions or some underlying mental health issues that are still caring for themselves, they're not threatening others, we can make recommendations to them and, make them aware of what kind of services are available. But unless they accept those services, there's really nothing that can be done.
I just didn't know if it would be helpful to them and to you to know of them, or you probably know of them already.
Yeah, I mean, we can discuss it after the meeting and, go from there.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All right, I have a recommendation that the police services report for October to December be accepted as presented. Do I have a mover? Mover, Gory, seconder? Rob, all in favor? Motion's carried. So I see the bylaw update here. Is Sean providing that? Matthew's doing that? Okay, so item number 10 then, the bylaw update. Matthew Armstrong.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So AMPS, which is the Administrative Monetary Penalty System, is a way to divert a lot of the appeals and things away from the provincial offences court and dealing with them a little bit more in-house and quicker. So far we have the parking bylaw and the vacant buildings bylaw that if you receive a parking ticket, you can appeal through that process as opposed to waiting for your day in court. So with that, we created a screening officer, which is myself, and then a hearing officer. So first, the screening officer takes a look at the situation, determines if there is extenuating circumstances, determines if there was truly a violation, those types of things, and they can decide to decrease the ticket or cancel it or reaffirm the ticket that's applied or the penalty. Then if they still want to appeal, then it goes to a hearing officer, and in which case it's a 3-person board. We haven't had anyone go to that extent this far, and to date we've only had one appeal of a parking ticket. So that's kind of what that is kind of explaining there. And then as we just mentioned, bylaw does work with our OPP and the mental health crisis team. And specifically, we work on homelessness issues, and that's what's noting in the second point there, that we've been involved in 12 specific situations. Then 164 parking tickets have been issued as of the date of this report, which is the end of December. That's down considerably from previous years. We've several years ago, we had a lot of issues at Canadian Tire and Independent Grocer with trucks parking there overnight. We've done a lot of work with Canadian Tire and Independent and the OPP to try and divert that away. So that's really improved a lot, and it's more enjoyable to live for the people that are close by and residential. Then the vast majority of our parking tickets then end up being during the winter, during overnight periods, as well as violations usually on King Street, that sort of thing. 231 animal tags for 2022, and then we also ran a rabies clinic in September in conjunction with the Leonard Leeds Grenville Health Unit. And then total bylaw cases were 133. Only 19 resulted in orders, but in terms of calls for service, we're probably in the neighborhood of 600 to 700 calls of service for bylaw. We investigate. We're able to alleviate the issue just with conversation, in which case it doesn't result in an order or fine or penalty. But then we do move on to specific items, in which case it was 130.
Let's move on to item number 11, old business, and that would be Matthew Armstrong.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So throughout the last couple of years, the Attorney General Ministry is looking to reshape how police services boards are formed in Ontario. So there's numerous models, and so the town of Prescott has a specific agreement with the OPP, and as such, we have a police services board. Very similar to what you would see in Brockville, they have their own police service and they have a police services board. What they were, I think, attempting to do is there's some municipalities that don't have an agreement with the OPP, even though that they're serviced by the OPP, and they have no police services board. So Eversford Cardinal, to our east, has the OPP as a service provider, but they don't have a board. So the Attorney General's office was trying to kind of create a more common approach to this and kind of link the detachments with the areas of service. So Grenville Detachment in Prescott in particular, I believe you service Prescott, Eversford Cardinal, and Augusta.
Yes.
And really that was the impetus of trying to create a board that would reflect that. So that's what this report is talking about. A second board would be created for Marrickville, Wolford, and North Grenville, which is serviced from the office in Kentville. So really that's what it's talking about. There was some disagreement as to exactly what that was going to look like in our first iteration. The ministry asked us to take another look at it. This is what we came up with, which is the two-board solution, which I think makes perfect sense. We're trying to work with our neighbors and also makes sense from a service perspective with how the OPP is set up. And while we don't have official confirmation, our guesstimate is that this will be implemented sometime in 2023. So we would be moving to a combined board of which Prescott would have 3 members. Or 2 members, and then each of the municipalities would have 2 members, and then there would be 2 provincially appointed members to the board across the 3 municipalities. So again, we're still waiting for official confirmation, but that would affect all of the police services boards in Ontario, that they'll try to do it at the same time. Thank you.
Any questions on that? Right. Let's move then to new business. Are there any items under new business? Nope. And no media. Okay, I guess we're moving on to 14, the Public Service Board announcement. Are there any suggestions for the new Public Service Board announcement?
I didn't think of that actually before coming. So do you have any ideas, Julian?
Have we done the aggressive driving thing?
So, it's been a while since we've done that, so it probably wouldn't be a bad idea. Like across the province, impaired related collisions are up. Our impaired charges are up in Grenville County, period. I haven't pulled the stats for Prescott specifically. The last I checked, Prescott was a little lower than the rest of the areas, but it wouldn't be a bad idea to do an aggressive driving / impaired driving campaign awareness. There are the MAD signs that are now up. I have seen them in the area, so there is some awareness. It wouldn't be a bad idea to do that.
Anybody else have any thoughts on?
That would we be able to pull the ride campaign totals?
Yep.
That might go well.
Yeah, we can get you the ride campaign. So let me just make a note of that.
So, more from a town perspective, but it would be great if police services could support it, is just people putting their snow on the roadway.
Yep.
It is a provincial offense to do so, and it's something that it makes it unsafe for people when they're driving by. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then we're looking at what, the driving or the everything, the whole everything?
Yeah, it's kind of just space it out.
That's fine. That sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I can provide Matt with the ride stats so that way there you can create that.
All right. So that's what we'll do then. Let's see, there's no items under closed session. There's nothing to rise and report. Unless there's something else, item 17 is the adjournment. The recommendation reads that the meeting be adjourned at 9:32. Do I have a mover? Dory. A seconder, Rob. All right, all in favor? All right, carried. Thank you.